الله. يا مريم لا تنسينا عدروب الحق اهدينا. يا مريم لا تنسينا عدروب الحق اهدينا. ومنصلي لك عينينا وشفاعي عدلي صلى. ومنصلي لك عينينا وشفاعي عدلي صلى.
I'm in the neighborhood, and I was wandering down Wellington Street, and I saw his nursing, and I thought, what's this all about? So I was just drawn into it, and there was Fred, smiling away, greeting people, and I noticed all his books, and I was looking around, and he came up to me, he shook my hand like that, and he said, I'm Fred, and I said, I'm Patty, and just looking right deep into my eyes with a big smile, he said, I like Patty. And I was just reminded of that during Mass. I'd forgotten about that incident, and just how that was just a moment of heart-to-heart connection, and I learned so much through going to his center whenever I dropped in, and learned about mercy, about hospitality, about welcoming people no matter where they are in life. And I'm really thankful to Fred and all the people who work with him for that.
Wow,
Thank you.
We need people to line up. Anybody else want to come up? We need people to line up. Somebody come up, please. Somebody come and say something about how they met.
Many years ago in this community. I'm an active member in the Hindenburg community, and just a couple of remembrances. One of them, many of you may remember Fred's Christmas concerts that he used to hold in this church every year. And I believe it was in 2000 when he had a special event that night, and he made sure that he had Mary and Joseph there. He's laughing already. And we always, at the end of the Christmas concert, we had the procession down Wellington Street to Somerset Square, where the creche was. And that year he brought in a donkey so that Mary could ride it all the way down from the church to Somerset Square. And it was a really cold night that night too, as it often was that night when we had to do that procession. So as people went out, Mary and Joseph were going to lead the procession with the donkey, and the church started ringing the bells to announce the procession.
9 o'clock at night.
The donkey was not happy with this at all. And the donkey wouldn't move. It stood in the middle of Wellington Street as everyone eventually gave up and walked past it down to Somerset Square. And you looked back from the end of the procession, and there was the donkey still standing there in the middle of the street.
He made an ass out of all of us.
He certainly did. I have so much respect for you, Fred. It was wonderful working with you all those years in Hindenburg and changing the face of this community. And Fred was that place that was always there for people that really needed it, and we worked well together. And oftentimes we used to walk politicians around every election Every person running for office, whether it was civic, provincial, federal, had to go on a walkabout with us. And we took them individually. And Fred's was always one of the places that we would stop in if it was during the daytime. And we pointed out to them the important work and how it helped a community that was having a lot of problems at the time. And it was such a vital place for us. So thank you so much, Fred. We miss you here in Hittenburg, but I know you're doing such good work over where you are now.
He picked me up on a bus stop. Actually, I was working in a building close to where His Mercy was, and I noticed His Mercy there all the time, and I wanted to go, but the only time it was open, I was working. And I knew it was Catholic because I could see the statue of Our Lady in the window. So anyway, a couple of days later, I met Fred at the bus stop, Our Lady of His Mercy. So we were chatting, and he said he runs the place, and I told him about my job. So we arranged to open up an hour early so that I could go with him and pray the rosary. So I remember knocking on his door at 9:30 in the morning, and Hillary running down in his pajamas, lifting up the flap and motioning me not to go away. So this is how I started going to Our Lady of His Mercy. And I started in 1993, and I kept going until it closed. So Fred's a good friend of mine. I really think he's the best.
It was always a place that I could take such people to, because it was always covered in prayer, and it was a peaceful place. And I remember one day there was a Muslim friend of mine who was going through very great difficulties, and I took him over there, and after his spending time with Fred for about 2 or 3 weeks, he just came back, and whenever I spoke to him, he was so much more at peace. So Fred's place of His Mercy was usually a place that brought a lot of peace and consolation to people who normally we would find difficult to deal with. So by the grace of God, he was able to do that. Thank you, Fred. Thank you for your thing. And on the more joyful side, though, for Christmas, we would go carol singing up and down the streets of Wellington and into the bingo palace. They'd even stop bingo just so that we could sing Christmas carols.
And the bars. Remember, we used to go into the bars too.
And we also went into the bars, yes, at the Emdale Tavern, and bring the joy of Christ into these places. So thanks you, Fred. Thank you for your friendship all these years.
When I worked as a volunteer a number of years ago, it was an example of the gospel in action. I was really impressed because Fred brought a woman in off the street, and I think she had addiction problems, and right in front of me in the center, he actually washed her feet and dried her feet just as our Lord did in the Gospels. So that was a wonderful example of gospel truth proclaimed by Fred and his center. So thanks, Fred, for that. I'll never forget that.
Infinitely great about Fred is his incarnate mercy. So for me, my experience with Fred's incarnate mercy was Jesus incarnate through Fred. So I first met Fred on the Feast of St. Francis when I was with the Companions of the Cross as a seminarian. And I was very impressed by his ministry on the street, which most all of you have experienced. I only came to Ottawa 4 years ago, but the reason I came to Ottawa 4 years ago was because Jesus called me through Fred. I was a hermit. I was living as a hermit in Combermere for 3 years, and my spiritual director discerned I wasn't called to be a hermit. And then within, I think, a few days, maybe a week from hearing that word that I was not called to be a hermit, there was a celebration of Our Lady of Combermere. And Fred came from Ottawa to celebrate that Our Lady of Cumbermere feast. After Mass, I walk out of the Mass, and I'm kind of disillusioned, like, okay, well, life is different now. I'm not going to be a hermit, and I was going to be a hermit because my bishop called me to basically to live as a hermit, and I was doing that for the rest of my life. And he walks up to me, and I hadn't seen him for like 2 years, and we knew each other just barely, like just a little bit, though he had been praying for me. So he walks up to me and says, "Jesus wants me to talk to you today." I was like, okay. So then afterwards, we had lunch afterwards at this reception, and I just shared where I was at. And he said, "Well, why don't you come to Ottawa, and I can show you my apostolate, and we can spend time and let Jesus do some inner healing ministry, just like what David was talking about with the priest that he's doing right now." And I was like, okay, well, I've been in silence and solitude 6 days a week, just coming for Mass on Sunday for the last year. And so going to downtown Ottawa was like totally the opposite of where I was going, where I was, but I was like, that really resonates with me. Even though it was like completely the opposite of what I was doing. And so then, anyways, as things changed, I came to discern the call to be more part of community. And so then I thought perhaps the call to Madonna House, but they said, well, we asked that you take time away from Cumbermere. So I said, okay, I'll go to Ottawa. And the reason I thought of Ottawa was because of Fred's invitation. So I phoned Fred up and he said, well, you know what, you can come stay with me. I just need to get things ready. I'm not ready just yet. So I came to Ottawa and I was able to find a place. And then I stayed with Fred for a week, and then we prayed, and it became clear that God is calling me to do what he's doing with other priests, this recovery. So it's a recovery of the poor person within each person. See, each of us are poor. We think that we do ministry to the poor, but I find that the poor are way richer spiritually than most average people, because they're usually the ones who are actually in touch with the reality of their own heart. And they usually have to deal with addiction because they actually really feel the pain, whereas we don't usually feel the pain, we're usually numb to the pain. So Fred helped me to come into that encounter with the poor Christopher. And that poverty is a deeper poverty that bishops and even popes, all of us, have, that we're not maybe aware of, or that we are aware of that we don't know how to encounter. So I'm very grateful for Fred encountering this poor person in Cumbermere 4 years ago. So, thanks.
Fred was at a prayer group at St. John the Apostle. My friend, her name was Letizia, he introduced me to Fred. I looked at him and he had this huge smile on his face. And I thought, wow. That's all I could say was, wow. And he gave my friend a huge hug. And he, of course, looked at me and wanted to give me a huge hug. This would have been in the mid-'80s or so. And then I was my early years of walking, struggling. And so I found the Lord and went to church steady in 1988. Then around, I guess it was in 1997 or so, I was walking down Wellington Street. I think it was Wellington, that's where His Mercy was. And I see this sign, His Mercy, and all these statues outside of it, and I thought, oh my, this is beautiful. I don't know what this is. The door was open, so I opened it, and I was like, oh, there's so much beauty. I could feel the peace in the place, you know? Nice couches, and Fred comes up and looks at me and has a big smile. I remembered him from way back. So he welcomed me, and that was the first time I ever heard the Divine Mercy chaplet being said. So this was probably in 97 or so, and I went a couple more times because I really enjoyed the atmosphere. I would leave there and I felt so much peace. And Fred had quite a few regulars that would come in, and I remember spending time with these people, and I don't know, I never forgot going there. And I didn't go often, but I did go periodically. At one time a little steadier, but then stopped, and I think I got busy and started having children. But I really believe in this center, and it's really done so much for people, and I really, really like hearing Fred say he's seen so many miracles. And we are spiritual, we are poor. I mean, I don't look at the poor as in less money. Spiritually, we are all so hungry, and I know Mother Teresa said that the West is suffering spiritually because we have so much here, you know? So anyway, it's just so nice to see the His Mercy Center celebrate 25 years, and someday soon I want to drop by at the center again because it's at a new location. I'll have to find out where that is. So thank you, and I will continue praying for this miraculous ministry. Amen.
Really well. And it was my mother that introduced me to Fred years ago, and that was just before getting married. And I've always thought that if I was to say that having 6 older brothers, my mom wanted another son, and Fred would have been that other son if she could adopt him. She loved Fred. So, but I've always seen Fred as another brother, so I have 7 brothers and my sister. So Fred, yeah. Anyway, when I got out of Fred from all the years of knowing Fred was when my wife and I, when we were married, of course, I told all about Fred and his ministry, and my mom was saying, well, you know, he takes groceries and things for the poor. Drop it off at his place. So we did. So it was like 1 year. Next year we did the same sort of thing, but this time getting to see Fred, know about Fred, and just falling in love with the guy, because when you really look at him and the way how he greets you, it's just like looking at Jesus. His eyes are just sparkling. There's unconditional love, and he welcomes you with such love. And he's done that with everybody I've ever seen him encounter and meet. So Fred taught my family a lot of wonderful things. I have 4 kids. I'm now up to, by next year, 10 grandchildren. But what was really neat about my 4 children is that they learned that Christmas isn't just all about me. It's about others, those who do not have anything. And they got to really realize at such a young age that Jesus, the whole important about Christmas is Jesus, about giving to others. So, you know, Fred, you opened up the doors to really the eyes of my children and their hearts to seeing what Christmas is all about. Gifts of the Magi. My hands froze many times being outdoors, playing the guitar, and singing Christmas songs. But great memories, Fred, and you provided them for myself, my family. God bless you. Thank you.
A Christmas outreach in the city for 10 years. And we were especially trying to reach the wholeness of the heart. Christmas and all the celebrations were a terrible time for people. They just wanted to pull the covers over their head and just wait till Christmas passed. Because the wound of their homeless heart would be open wide. So we created a program called the Gifts of the Magi, and we asked people from the city to bring a gift to a homeless person, and we would have like a collection center, a new gift to identify what it was for man or woman and age. And we started the campaign with the media, and we erected an outdoor creche. And Cheryl, who spoke earlier, she is the Mother Teresa of Ottawa, of Prendergast anyway. I mean, she said, knowing things about me, I could be here for a day to talk about Cheryl. But anyway, her husband, Vance, who's not here, built us an outdoor creche. He's a carpenter. And so, at a time where you couldn't put a Christian creche in a public park anymore, because of Cheryl and others, we were able to put it in a little part of a park here in our Hintonburg. And it was where we did our campaign, where we had the TV cameras come, and Darcy and Deacon Dee, who was here earlier, the 2 of them, and a number of people dressed up in Magi's and angels and Mary and Joseph. And we had, you know, we did this for the media, and we told people, yeah, this is, you know, what we do, and, you know, basically announced it to the city. And Darcy was always there for me. I mean, every year I could count on Darcy. You know, everything in a charity is you don't buy it. You don't pay for it. God has to lead it, and you are grateful for whatever you get. Well, some people overwhelmed me by their support, and Darcy was totally that guy. And I can't tell you how many times he ministered his music, not just on the Christmas things, but when we did retreats, and we did conferences, and we did a whole week of conferences at St. Paul University that he led. I could go on about Darcy too for a long time, but it's the but this is not me. This charity is you. This charity was God bringing his people together. God bringing his people together who wanted to do something, and they all said yes. And I watched it. I didn't lead it, I just watched it, and I witnessed the miracles of how giving changes lives. Not just those who received, but those who were, like Rosa just said, you know, when she was cooking, she just came alive, you know, and she was receiving so much more that she was giving. And truly that's what it is, you know, and what Jesus is basically telling us again through the divine mercy. You know, do the works of mercy. That's how not only you witness me most perfectly, but that's how you will receive my mercy. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy, right? So Darcy, thank you for being merciful, and may God shower you with his mercy, as he is.
10 grandchildren. He's already doing it.
Okay, we have Mr. Pat McLeod is next. Pat McLeod.
Let me introduce him. Let me introduce him.
All right.
Now, as I said, you know, God is the one who does it all, right? At the center, yeah, the volunteers, no one did any recruiting. God sent who he wanted to send. The benefactors were who he put it on their hearts to help us. The people who came through the door, it was all Jesus America. And there were some volunteers that were just extraordinary beyond extraordinary. I mentioned Mama Maria to you. She enlisted all of our Lebanese women after she passed away. There's a beautiful picture over here of Mama Maria and Catherine Doherty, who very much inspired the work at her friendship house. But there was a woman that has been a dear, dear friend for a long time, and that is Pat McLeod. And I want to call her forward. This woman worked with the first AIDS victims in Ottawa. When nobody wanted anything to do with men and women suffering and dying with AIDS, this woman stepped forward and said, I'll be there. And there was a beautiful program called The Living Room. And she was one of the first. She was ostracized because of it. No one wanted to sit with her because at that time they thought, because she was working with men and women with AIDS, that they would contract it. So she went through it all. But she's a retired nurse, and she came every Thursday for 10 years. And she loved our people.
It's a little higher. A little higher.
That's good.
Testing. I usually have a lot to say, but tonight I'm just lost for words. When I was working with the kids with AIDS, it got to be quite a difficult thing for me to do. And I had to give it up. So I said to our Blessed Mother, now Blessed Mother, now what? And I heard twice, go to France. go to Fred's. Now, I had met Fred once, maybe months before that, but I knew who she meant. And so I went. And I wandered through the door, and Fred said to me, "Where did you come from?" And I said, "Fred, I heard twice, go to Fred, go to Fred. So here I am." And he said, "I need help. Can you come on Thursdays?" And I said, "Yes. What day is today?" And it was Thursday. And so I started with Fred, and I think the happiest days I've ever spent have been there alongside with Fred, my fourth son.
I moved to Ottawa in the, basically the winter of 2009, and it was probably sometime in that later part of the fall or winter that I met Fred and started volunteering with him, and I spent nearly 4 years at Our Lady of His Mercy on Thursday afternoons, and what can I say, that was a time of profound formation for me, and like Pat said, I can say wholeheartedly that was the most blessed time. The most blessed time of my life, and my parents instilled in me a real love from the time I was very young. They instilled a real love and heart for the poor in me, and following my time at my formation at Madonna House for a year in 2002-03, I was in Winnipeg for a while, and then eventually landed in Ottawa. And Our Lady of His Mercy was such a home for me, and because Fred and Our Lady, it just completely embodied what I truly believe Christ is calling all of us, all Christians, all Catholics, to do. And I think we're all called to love the poor. And Fred, you have been such an inspiration. And words can't, I could share so much, but I just want to say how much I love you. And that season of my life was the most blessed of my life, and I also met my husband Jean-Paul there, who had been previously on mission trips, had gone on a mission trip with Fred to the Philippines, and we both love Fred so much. And I think of the movie. It's called Entertaining Angels with Dorothy Day. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. But there's a part in the film where she's expressing to a friend how, this movement towards the poor and those who are marginalized. And this friend of hers is noticing her kind of moving in that direction, and he says, why are you doing this? And he said, she said something along the lines of, because it is with the poor that I most profoundly encounter Christ, or something along those lines. And that's definitely the case for me. And also there's a quote. I think of you, Fred. This is a quote for you, but it's from, I think it's St. Vincent de Paul, and the quote is, love the poor, and your days will be filled with sunlight, and you will not be frightened at the hour of death. So, yeah, anyway, I love you, Fred, and I love so many of you here. I'm so glad to see you all. Anyway, thank you.
Because of very special volunteers like Mary. People knew that Mary was safe. They knew that they could they could trust, they could share themselves, that she wasn't going to judge them. Mary Reed taught me and many of the volunteers this wonderful unconditional embrace of the poor Christ. And truly, we shared a very special experience. There was one man that we loved so very much mutually. His name is Little John. Little John was born without an anus. There was no opening. And so he, as an infant, had to have surgery to open up that orifice. And it was a horrible situation. From an early age, he had to have what is it called, a colostomy bag or whatever? Yes, and so with that was associated a stench, an odor. He was terribly ostracized by his own family. You might say his family orphaned him because they couldn't tolerate him. So they put him in an orphanage. And he spent most of his years in an orphanage because his parents and his family couldn't handle the odor and the poverty of this man. Caused him great difficulty. Long story short, he was like a modern-day leper. No one wanted, he was untouchable. As soon as you got close to him, you could smell him. And that was a terrible thing. And so people constantly mocked him. He was so wounded when we met him. And how he was dealing with that terrible pain was he was drinking. He lived in a rooming house just behind us. And Mary Reed and the volunteers especially saw the beauty of Jesus Christ in him. If all of the victimization he'd gone through, he still had this love for everybody. He just loved you, and he trusted you, and even if he knew he was going to be hurt, but he felt safe in our center because of volunteers, lovers like Mary Reed. Well, it came to a time where his cancer was spreading, and it was getting very close. And he asked, we were able to get him into the mission downtown and the hospice. And he asked me if I would do his funeral. And I said, yes, I'd be very honored to do that. And while he was at the mission, Mary Ree and I went on Sundays to visit him. Took him out in the wheelchair, and you know, he loved his cigarettes still. And we bought him this pack of cigarettes, and we went and walked along the canal or whatever. Don't start crying, I'm going to start crying. And so Little John, there was a love that I think that Mary Ree and I were given of Christ in the poor through Little John, like no other person. I mean, we had so many situations like that, but Little John was extraordinary. Anyway, I got a call one afternoon. It was about 2 o'clock or something like that from the mission. John was ready to pass. So I called up Mary Reed, and she didn't have work for a little while, so yet she was scheduled to work, but the two of us zipped into the mission, and just to spend some time with him, and especially to pray the chaplet of divine mercy. As you know, the promises of the Lord. And I can't tell you how many times we saw that promise fulfilled by Jesus, who defended that soul in the hour of death, and they died with great peace, and the whole room would fill with the presence of God. So we went to Little John's room, little room at the mission, and we talked with him and encouraged him. He was completely with it, completely conscious of what was going on. But Mary Ree and I sat with him for a while. Mary Ree had to go to work. We prayed the chaplet of mercy before she left. And then it was just he and I in the room for about 5 hours, something like that, dark room. And I just remember trying to coach him with trust and encourage him in his faith. He had faith. He believed that Jesus was his Lord and Savior, but it was very difficult what he was experiencing. And every so often when the fluids would get too much in his lungs and he would not be able to breathe, you know, it was terrible. He started to console me because I couldn't take it. But anyway, it came to the point where little John drowned in the fluids of his lung. And the nurse and the assistant came into the room. I called them. And I can't begin to tell you, the presence of the Lord was so thick, you could have cut it with a knife. But we couldn't move. The nurse who witnessed it went through a conversion because of it. But as John was dying in my arms, I saw Jesus dying as his lungs filled. And I saw my own death. And little John gave me the greatest gift. After John's death, the Lord took all fear of dying from me. As I was a tough case, I just didn't know what we were going to do with her. She would come in, she would ask for a miraculous medal. She would come in and have a meal. She would feel very good about it, and then she would go out and do it again, continue to do it, right? Anyway, I said to the Lord, I remember one night when we were just sitting together, and I said, Lord, what are we going to do about Suzanne? How are you going to get Suzanne? Because I could just, my heart would break. I would just see this incredibly beautiful woman, but in so much pain that she was self-destructing, so quickly. Anyway, it came to the point where she contracted a disease. And she came to tell me about it. I was able to get her into the mission. Even though it was only for men, they made an exception for her. And it was about 2 months later, maybe less than that, that I got a call from the mission. And it was Suzanne, out of the blue. It was one evening. It was about 7 o'clock or something like that. And all of a sudden I get this call. It's Suzanne. Hi, Fred. Hi. How you doing? Oh, well, I want to confess my sins. I said, really? Yes, I want to confess my sins. Can you bring a priest? I said, yes, I can bring a priest. I will find a priest. And I said, I'll be right down. So I called up Father Licazar, John Licazar, at Holy Rosary. I said, Father, I wouldn't do this under other circumstances, but this soul is very precious to Jesus. And this may be the only opportunity that Jesus is going to get to save her from her sins. Will you come with me down to the mission? I said, well, yes, okay. And so he pulled up in front of the place and got in the car. And so I told him a little bit about Suzanne. We get to the mission, and Suzanne is waiting. And Father John goes into the room, and I'm just outside praying a storm, for this to happen. Anyway, because I've been serving her for 10 years, maybe. Never thought I would see this. Anyway, so I'm sure it was a good half an hour, and he emerged from the room first, and he was shaking his head. And he was saying to me, I've never experienced anything like this. He says, I can't. It was amazing. He said, Fred, like you said, the angels, he said, I didn't say it. He said, you know how all heaven rejoices when one returns to the Lord? He says, I had that experience with her. Well, just after he said that, she walks out of the room, and she's singing, I saw the light, I saw the light, no more sorrow, no more. She was filled with joy after this confession, after her sins where Jesus just washed her white as snow.